Hello everyone, welcome back to another video of Cloud Deep Dive. In today's video, we will talk about how Amazon EC2 instances and on-prem servers can connect to S3 bucket by using AWS PrivateLink. So let's start with how EC2 instances running in your VPC can access your S3 bucket. So one of the ways you can have your internet gateway, have your EC2 instances running in a public subnet, and via the internet you can access the S3 bucket. But what if these EC2 instances are running in a private subnet? In that case, you can have a NAT gateway and then you can route traffic to the NAT gateway, and from there you can access your S3 bucket. But in both the approaches, your traffic is going via the internet. So do we have any solution where my traffic does not go to the internet and it remain on my Amazon network? Yes. For that, what we can do? We can use gateway endpoint. With gateway endpoint, your traffic remains within Amazon network. So you create the gateway endpoint, it updates the route table of your VPC, saying that any traffic going for the S3 prefix list, which is the list of public IP addresses of your S3, will go to the gateway endpoint. And all the traffic remain within the Amazon network. This is the preferred or the suggested approach from Amazon if you're trying to connect to your Amazon S3 from your VPC. With gateway endpoint, you can use standard S3 regional DNS names, which resolves to S3 public IP address. Next, let's talk about how you can access this S3 bucket from your on-prem data center. This data center is connected to AWS by using Direct Connect. So in this case, you can use public WAF. Public WAF is created over DirectNet, which is a virtual interface to access any public resources which are not part of your VPC in AWS. In this case, what AWS does is it announces all the public IP addresses of your AWS services to your corporate data center. So if your server is using this DNS name, which is resolvable to a public IP address of S3 bucket, then you can use the S3 bucket. Then you can access this S3 bucket by using your public virtual interface. But in certain scenarios, either corporate data centers, they are not connected via TechNet. They are either using VPN connection or their security team does not allow them to use these public IP addresses to connect to AWS resources. They have strict requirement that you should be using only the private IP addresses. So to solve that problem, we can use interface endpoint. When you create interface endpoint, you have to specify what subnet you want to use, and you will choose maybe 2 or 3 subnet for high availability. What AWS does is it creates an ENI in each of the subnet, and this subnet should be in a different availability zone. So when it creates an ENI in those ENIs get an IP address from that VPC or from that particular subnet, and you can access those ENIs or the private IP address via TrackNet by using either private WAF or transit WAF or by using your VPN connection. So after that, your AWS corporate data center can access the S3 bucket by using this interface endpoints. Now let's talk about the DNS name. From your EC2 instances within the VPC, can access your S3 bucket by using this DNS name s3.useast1.amazonaws.com. And when you create interface endpoint, you get different DNS names. So let's talk about what are different types of DNS name you get by creating interface endpoint. So you get regional and zonal DNS name. Regional DNS name resolved to an IP address of each of the ENI you created in each subnet while creating the interface endpoint. And for each ENI, you get a zonal DNS name as well, and which resolve to the private IP address of that corresponding subnet ENI. So if your corporate data center tried to resolve to S3 bucket by using this DNS name, they will resolve to the private IP address. And these DNS names are publicly resolvable. So if you take this DNS name and try to resolve it, do NSLookup or dig from your own computer, which is not connected to AWS or any computer on the internet, you will get a private IP address. So as long as that computer has private connectivity to your VPC, that computer will be able to access your S3 bucket. So that's why your corporate data center will be able to resolve this DNS name to a private IP address and because it has connectivity by using either private or transit WAF or VPN connection to your VPC, is able to access these S3 buckets. But what happened that in certain scenario, your servers are not using on your data center, not using this regional or zonal DNS name. They want to use the same DNS name which you're using in your EC2 instance. So this one. But these DNS names are resolved to public IP address. In that case, they cannot use this private. And your security team also does not allow you to use these uh, public IP address to access these S3 buckets from your data center. For that, what we can do? We need to take a couple of steps to make it work. The very first step is we need to enable the private DNS name. So when we enable the private DNS name, what it does that it creates a private hosted zone and associate it with the VPC. This private hosted zone is created by AWS, managed by AWS, and is not visible to us. So if you go to Route 53, you won't see that private hosted zone. And in that hosted zone, it creates a CNAME which maps your DNS name s3.useast1.amazonaws.com to the regional endpoint of your interface endpoint. So what happened after this particular uh, feature is enabled? As you might have watched my earlier video on the Route 53 where I explained that how resolver work within the VPC, how the priority is that first it goes to the resolver outbound or resolver rules, then it checks your private hosted zone, then checks all the Amazon ready DNS, and then it goes to a public DNS name. So in this case, because my private hosted zone takes priority, and when my EC2 instance tried to resolve this DNS name here, it resolved to my interface endpoint. So what happened that instead of these EC2 instances using gateway endpoint, these start using my interface endpoint, which we don't want because interface endpoints are paid service. There's a cost involved in it, but for the gateway endpoint, there's no cost involved in it. And preferred way of using within the VPC is a gateway endpoint. So how we solve the challenge? So AWS has launched another feature where you can enable another feature on top of enable private DNS name is to enable private DNS only for the inbound endpoint. So you can make this private hosted zone enable in such a way that it only applicable to resources or to servers which are coming outside of the VPC. Any request within the VPC will still go via the gateway endpoint, but any request coming outside the VPC will go through your interface endpoint. So that's the first step. The second step, my corporate data center, if they try to resolve this DNS name, they're still resolving to public IP address. How you solve that? So for that, what we can do, we can create resolver inbound endpoint, and we can update our DNS resolver on my corporate data center saying that any request going for that S3 DNS name will go to my resolver inbound endpoint. So once the request comes here, it will check the private hosted zone, map it to my interface endpoint and get the IP address of that and send it back to your corporate data center. And from there, your corporate data center server can access the S3 bucket by using either direct connect, private or transit WAF, or by using your VPN connection. So that's all I wanted to cover in today's video, folks. Hope you understand that how the corporate data center can access your S3 bucket by using either public WAF, or if your corporate or security team is not allowing you to access via using public IP address, then how you can use your private WAF for your VPN connections. If you like the video, please hit the like button and please do subscribe to our channel. I will be releasing more architecture related videos on our channel in future. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye.